A lot of you have seemed very fond of my reviews pertaining to the franchise of The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse by Charlie Mackesy. In fact, one of my most popular videos on this channel was me announcing the arrival of the animated adaptation of The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse, which got more views than the actual review of it. Looking back now, I guess people will click more onto something that will pertain hype rather than the actual thing. But anyway, I was out shopping about one day when I noticed this was being sold amongst the books, and I decided to get it and read up on it, because this is obviously a follow-up to the aforementioned Boy, Mole, Fox and Horse book. This is Always Remember, The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, the Horse, and the Storm. Hit it, Dougie Maclean!
And I am ready for the storm.
Yes, sir, ready. I am ready for the storm. Ready for the storm. So, this is a follow-up to the aforementioned story. In the previous book, it seems like they're going on this ongoing journey homewards, or at least so it's implied. But it doesn't really explicitly say so in the book here, but according to summaries that you'll find in online shops and other places where you can find that kind of description, it says that these characters don't really seem to know where they're going. All they know is that they're on a journey. Which is quite interesting because the animated adaptation implied that they got lost and were trying to make their way home. And then the boy realized that his friends were his real home. At least so it's implied. As far as the books are concerned, their end goal is never really made clear, as even Charlie Mackesy has made it quite clear. The story is more so about the journey than it is the destination. It's more about a story of growth and encouragement and facing your inner demons and facing your own insecurities and finding the grace necessary to overcome the odds. That's what these books have been about, and that's what makes these simple yet powerful illustrations all the more profound. Obviously some more detailed than others, but you get the idea. I do remember a friend of mine pointed out that I was trying to make too much sense of a story that didn't primarily put logic first, it put emotions first. This friend of mine, who was also quite passionate about storytelling, was calling me out on me over-analyzing the animated adaptation in regards to the logistics of why the characters were in the circumstances that they are. On the one hand, yeah, my friend was right to call me out on over-analyzing what is otherwise a simple story, but on the other hand, Will Jordan points out that you can't let themes be a blanket excuse to get away with bad storytelling. Thankfully, The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse story series lends itself more to the kind of emotional-based storytelling that Doug Walker would describe about Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs and Where the Wild Things Are and The Wizard of Oz. The kind of stories where the plot is simple enough, where its main strength is mainly in emotional storytelling, going where your emotions want to go to, not so much logistics behind it. And so through that logic, it's obviously clear that Mackesy is trying to portray a journey between deep friends, more so than getting a definitive destination. I think that's why these stories have had such a universal appeal. I mean, debatably, people could say the series isn't so much a coherent narrative, so much as a series of individual illustrations that Charlie Mackesy put up on Instagram and then just so happened to compile them into something resembling a narrative. And yeah, I guess you could say that's true, but at the same time, it is still a pretty powerful, coherent narrative. A simple but powerful narrative of friends overcoming the odds together and their strength being their bond with each other. As for the events of this book, it's not clear if this is a direct sequel to what came before, or maybe some kind of midquel of what came before. It's not really made that clear. In fact, if I were to compare this book to anything, and this example is going to sound very bizarre at first, but this book always remember, is the equivalent of Super Mario Galaxy 2. I make this comparison because people have said that Super Mario Galaxy 2 doesn't do that much to differentiate itself from the first game, other than adding in a few new gameplay elements, namely Yoshi and the Starship Mario. But other than that, it's pretty much the same as the first game. That's pretty much what this book is. Other than adding in a few new plot elements, it's essentially the same story. But hey ho, the reason why they both work anyway is because the formula is just so strong that people can't really bring themselves to hate it. Can't really bring themselves to hate either of them, if this comparison makes any sense.
By the way, for those of you who owned a Nintendo Wii, I never grew up playing the first Super Mario Galaxy game, so that means I had to earn Rosalina the hard way on Mario Kart Wii.
As I've suggested earlier, it's pretty much the same kind of formula as the previous book. But this time, there's a lot more emphasis on certain things and just a few new plot elements to keep things fresh. And it's a really interesting plot element that they throw in there. Now, for those of you who have read the first book, or at least seen the animated adaptation of the first book, you'll notice that there was a part in which there was a storm, and then the horse comforted his friend saying, "The storm will pass."
When the big things feel out of control, focus on what you love right under your nose.
Oh, I like that.
This storm will pass.
I've noticed in this particular book, as the title suggests, there's a lot more emphasis on storms and a lot more emphasis on the fact that storms come and go. This book is basically a more elaborated edition of that segment from The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. As not only is it saying that the storm will pass, it's also saying that storms are temporary, but the blue sky is eternal. And it keeps going on and on and on with more elaborations like that. And it's very inspirational because it's clear that these characters are going through a tough time, but yet, if they hold themselves to that eternal foundation of timeless hope, they'll make it through any storm indeed. The boy is insecure about himself, but the horse is confident. And love is the main source of confidence that the characters give to each other to find grace to overcome themselves and to find the confidence to keep going. There's no point in being a nihilist. There is no point in being a quitter. There's going to be tough times, but you can overcome them if you allow yourself to. That's essentially the message of this book. It's a really powerful message. In fact, there's one particular segment in the story that, as I mentioned before, is particularly fascinating, but in order to describe that, I'm going to have to spoil what happens. So, spoiler alert. So, there's this one part where the storm gets so severe that the boy loses track of the mole and the fox and the horse, to the point where the boy was all on his own and now he's doubting himself, saying, was it all my fault? And then there's this weasel who comes along, presumably not knowing any better, just questioning, would they have left you if they loved you? And then the boy thinks to himself, I think it's time to be a friend to myself. There's various ways you could interpret that, and eventually the boy notices the fox returning, and apparently the boy doesn't recognize the fox at first until the fox says, it's me, and then the boy says, oh, it's you, and then the boy hugs the fox. And man alive! The boy eventually reunites with his friends, and this segment pretty much concludes with the mole asking, where did you find your strength from? And then the boy saying, from remembering I am loved. Man, what a powerful story beat. This is then followed up by the friends reuniting with the horse, who once again spreads out his wings, and then they fly, and oh my days, look at this scenery. This is beautiful. This is art. As well as imaginatively quirky. I love this. Although, I hate to sound like an absolute jerk, but this question probably warrants asking. But then again, like I said before, this is a simple story. It's not meant to be rationalized in a traditional sense so much as felt and experienced. But, sorry, I have to mention this. If the storms were so severe, then why couldn't the horse just fly his friends over the storms. I mean, does the horse get tired? If the horse got tired from all the flying, that would make sense as to why they had to go through the storms. Or maybe if it was a midquel, this would be set during the part where the horse confesses that he didn't want to show his wings because the other horses got jealous. I mean, it doesn't ruin the experience, of course. This is a very moving experience, but I'm sorry, I had to ask the question. I'm sorry. As usual, the book maintains its charm, whether it be the mole's humorous obsession with cake, the fox's grittiness, the horse's gentleness, and the boy's overall growth. I mean, as far as I'm aware, Charlie Mackesy could just make a fortune of making constant sequels in this kind of series and still make a good fortune, because his illustrations on an individual basis say so much with so little, with quotes such as, "Every step is a victory no matter how small." There's just so much inspirational stuff out there, and it's great that we have authors like this giving out healthy messages like this. At the same time, though, I wish there was more that Charlie Mackesy could have done to justify this being a follow-up. Maybe explaining this in such a manner that it would be some kind of a midquel, or perhaps explaining if this is some kind of sequel. But I guess at this point, that's more of a nitpick than an actual critique, right? You know, I've had a thought. What if in the future, either Charlie Mackesy or somebody made some kind of special edition where both of the books are combined together and ordered in such a manner that it tells one big coherent narrative, where, so something like this. The boy is lost, then meets the mole. They go on a journey. They meet the fox, and despite the fox's initial hostilities, they win him over. They go on their journey. They meet the horse. They keep going. Eventually, the boy loses his friends during the storm, and the horses encourage him to say the storm will pass. The boy gets lost for a while and then gets reunited with his friends gradually. Then the horse opens up about being timid of opening up about his wings. And then the boy and his friends encourage the horse to open up about his wings, and then they fly, and then they make it through to the other end. I think something like that would be narratively fulfilling. As it is, I know Charlie Mackesy said that that these friends are not sure where they're going, and that this story was more about the journey than the destination. At the same time, if I did have a critique with this book, I think I'd like a bit more clarity of it being some kind of midquel. I would honestly love this book if it was explicitly mentioned as some kind of midquel. I think that would make thematic sense, if you get what I mean. So in any case, I rate this book a solid 11 out of 12. It's still absolutely worth the read, and it's absolutely worth your time, especially if you yourself have been going through storms of life and you need encouragement to take a courage to take a step. Because my days, we are living in a generation where more and more people need to learn to take a step. If you agree with me, type something profound in the comments. I would love to get conversations regarding the impact of the series in the comments down below. So, in the meantime, ScotsThinker signing out.
So hold on.